From the Vault is sponsored by Vita Coffee and Wine Bar in downtown Sandusky, where the elite meet to eat. Visit us in person or on the web at vitasandusky.com.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of From the Vault, leadership lessons you can bank on. We are in downtown Sandusky, Ohio, the roller coaster capital of the world, and we're on Columbus Avenue at Vita, where the elite meet to eat. What do you think of how Tom has spruced up the place, John?
Oh, I've been here several times, and I've enjoyed the company of all the people that have been here, and it's great conversation.
So if you're anywhere near Sandusky, Ohio, drive to Columbus Avenue, get yourself a coffee or something bolder and a bite to eat. Vita, where the elite meet to eat. Another sponsor is Lucky Stone Uniforms. LuckyStoneUniforms.com. Like Lucky Stone Uniforms on Facebook. If you are a police officer, firefighter, EMT, or nurse, or looking for any kind of work uniform, check out Lucky Stone Uniforms in beautiful downtown Huron, Ohio. From the Vault, leadership lessons you can bank on is produced by Lake Erie TV. Lake Erie TV is my friend AJ Dufresne. With us today, Lieutenant John McKinnon, retired Anchorage Police Department in beautiful Anchorage, Alaska. I've had the pleasure of meeting John there. I had the honor of hanging out with him a little bit when he was a homicide detective. He's had a number of leadership roles with the Anchorage Police Department. We're very fortunate to have him with us today. John, good to see you.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Paul, for inviting us.
We are talking leadership. We're talking leadership from different perspectives. I know you have a military background in the Air Force. I know you had a long and decorated career as a police officer and retired lieutenant in Anchorage. Certainly you have seen good and bad leadership. You have seen the absence of leadership. You have learned a lot. Your own leadership skills had to have been honed over those years. Talk to us a little bit about what leadership means to you and what you learned over the years.
I want to say that leadership, I think it even started before I went into the Air Force and then before becoming a police officer. I think it stems back to when I was even in high school, where both of us were exposed to many great men who transitioned us from our adolescence into being senior members of the community and on the football team. And there was lessons there that I learned that we kind of started to separate ourselves as taking mentorship from those coaches and teachers that we encountered. And many of those lessons I actually were able to use in my adulthood. And I reflect on that on a regular basis. One of the ones that came to mind was chasing a first suspect. I remember this being one of those things that I'm like, oh my gosh, we used to do this on the football field, and sometimes it was that, bring back a memory that I had when back in high school. Police work is one of those things that you don't generally choose police work. Police work is one of those things that chooses you. And what I mean by that is, when I got into the business, it wasn't something that I was aspiring to do. I had been a firefighter and a paramedic in the Air Force, and I was very well versed in helping people through that capacity. But when I did become a police officer, it was kind of by accident because it didn't see it coming. But what I quickly discovered is that I had a good fit. It was a good fit for me, and I was able to excel. And what really was inspiring was that there were so many people around me that were, pulling for my success, and good coaches, good trainers, good supervision, and good leadership. And you see it when you see it. And I think that it's hard for people to understand what leadership is, but it is kind of an art form. There's a lot to be drawn upon experience. And it boils down to having good integrity, also meeting people where they're at, and setting strong expectations about what you want from them and being consistent. And so integrity is important, and leading from the front. And I've had a good experience with that in many of my police incidents that I've had to be around.
I'd be negligent if I didn't bring up the dramatic and intense nature of police work. My previous guest, Mr. Bob Jones, CEO of the Chef's Garden, talked a bit about crisis management. He's got to manage a farm and employees when there's a drought or a deluge. Police work, I don't know if Bob ever had somebody shoot at him on the farm. So I can't think of a role other than possibly soldier where you have to stay cool under fire. It's one thing to be able to stay cool under fire as a leader. Share with us a little bit about how you train young officers how to stay cool under fire.
You know, when we hire police officers, one of the things we're looking for is for people to make decisions, because in many instances, people are calling the police in their most desperate moments of their life. And with that comes a lot of chaos. Either there had been a death involved or some major incident like a bank robbery or an assault of some sort, or even a homicide. These kinds of situations live in chaos. And in many instances, it's the police officer who actually comes there and starts to bring peace or bring justice for that person that may be the victim of a case. We find that like young officers come to us pretty green. It's some of them do have experience, but we were, working in Alaska, we were holding the line in the last frontier as far as the law enforcement and justice goes. So I think that it all starts out with picking the right person, and people have got to have strong integrity and a strong work ethic, and they have to be committed to a life of learning about the law and how to protect the public, and also to meet people where they're at in their worst moments, and above all, offer compassion in situations that are quite difficult. As far as young officers go, when they're learning the job of being a police officer, in my instance, I had to work in the job of being a police officer for 6 years, work in the beat, handling calls for service. But in each one of those calls that I responded to, I was the leader of that investigation in many instances, although they may be minimal crimes of a theft or a stolen vehicle, or just a loud dog complaint or snow removal complaint in Alaska, which is a very popular one. It's actually getting to speak with people and understand where they're coming from. Again, meeting people where they're at, and then at some point, once you've conquered that skill set, at about year 6, then you can become what they call a field training officer, which is what happened to me. I became a field training officer, and I was training new police officers where I was instilling them what the job entailed. And part of that, it's usually like a 6-month period, and you're offering the officer an opportunity to demonstrate what they already know from their academy, like a toolbox. They have a bunch of tools in there, and every circumstance is going to call for a different kind of tool. And so knowing what tool to pull out and what way to to work the case is definitely a skill set. And then training that is to give them the most experiences during their training as you can. So offering them opportunities to be dynamic in police work, and to realize that, okay, so I need this kind of tool on this kind of job. And sometimes it's as simple as a communication with the public, and that's a big one, keeping the public in tune, but also having strong integrity and being able to do the right thing even when people are not watching. So young officers thrive in this when it's a good fit. I've had both. I've had some that have been a good fit, and I've had some that weren't a good fit. Sometimes we can correct those situations with additional training, or sometimes we have to ask people to maybe choose a different career. So young officers, like an example I've had is, when you're in the vehicle, you're talking about doing police work. A lot of times people see the police as just driving around in your car. And young officers need to be constantly on the prowl for illegal activity, shaking doorknobs, making sure windows are closed, garage doors are down, watching people. That's part of our job, is to be the reasonable person. What's going on? Ask questions. In many instances, young officers find it difficult to do what we used to call officer-initiated activity, which is where the officer has to generate his own activity in between calls for service, because it's not all about sitting around waiting for the calls to come in. So I think that having as many experiences as they can during their field training offers the officer the best opportunity for success.
I want to drill down a little bit into something you mentioned. Any of my guests I have, we get into this idea of firing someone, letting someone go. And one of the things that fascinates me about leaders, people who are leaders of professional people in all walks of life, distinguishing a young officer who needs a little nurturing and growth from one who maybe chose the wrong profession. Mm-hmm. What are some red flags to look for to distinguish those two police officers, the one who needs some nurturing and growth and the one who maybe chose the wrong profession?
Sure. So when we select police officers, we're investing upwards of $150,000 in this individual. And so we have to evaluate mistakes because we know they're going to be there. And we usually break them down into a couple different categories. There's the mistakes of the head, like you just didn't know. And then there's the mistakes of the heart. And so the mistakes of the heart are when people try to do the right thing, but they just make a mistake. And those are the ones we can recover from very easily. But when we're talking about like integrity, and integrity is where we hold the line, and I seriously mean this, is like holding the line in Last Frontier is about holding people with strong integrity to do the right thing when they're not looking. And in an instance, we can work with officers when they make a mistake. We expect that, and we tell them that, yes, you're going to make mistakes, and that's okay, but at least you made a decision to do something in the moment, because doing nothing in many instances is the wrong decision. But when an officer leads you to believe that they have breached their integrity by either misleading or outright telling you something that's not true, then it becomes much more serious, because that sets the tone for their entire career. Because most of a police officer's work is done outside the presence of many people. Like it's, you're by yourself, you're doing things. So when we see people make mistakes and they can be recovered from that, we work with them, give them additional training, and monitor them, make sure that they understand the expectations of the duties that they're asked to do every day. And in most instances, rarely does it not work out. There are occasions where you do have to counsel people to the point where they're not going to be a good fit. It's real obvious. It's not a surprise to anyone when that happens.
We all have to carve out our own leadership style. But I like how at the beginning of our time together, you went all the way back to high school and leaders who have influenced you. During your career at Anchorage, I'm sure you saw all kinds of leaders. And while you no doubt carved out your own leadership style, I have a hunch there were one or two that you aspired to emulate, at least somewhat. And there were maybe one or two you thought, oh, I don't want to be like that. Share a little bit of about the characteristics of leaders you tried to emulate and leaders you did not want to emulate.
So I'm a collaborative leader. I set strong expectations for my subordinates, and they understood those expectations. And I was consistent. This is the number one thing, being consistent and being available to officers when they do have a question and ask about clarification or what they should do, and giving them clear direction also is important. I have seen leaders, there's times for direct leadership where you're telling people exactly what to do, but for the most part, it is an art, and you know what you want to get out of someone. So it's more about influence. My style of leadership is gaining influence from the employee to produce what we ask them to do. Some of my leaders that I had were very autocratic and very right in your face. And that is a small percentage of the time that you're in the leadership position that you're being the autocrat. And so I think that is one of the areas where people who do not do well in leadership find like a wall, is that they don't understand that it's about influence and leading people in situations. And each situation dictates the leadership style that you're going to dictate. In an emergent situation, very direct, very collaborative with, like, we need to get resources here, and then always doing the right thing, right? Like, this is paramount, is to do the right thing, and justice prevails. I mean, we're protecting the Constitution of the United States, which is all about everybody getting a fair shake. And so being fair and consistent in a chaotic world is sometimes hard to see, especially if it's an emergent situation. I have seen officers have acts of great bravery and just awed in what they had done in a circumstance. And also that same officer offer compassion to people who have had a loss, and see that is, like, that's what I want to model. I want to model that compassion in my own career. So it is, there's some leaders that I wouldn't follow, and I've got sayings for each one of these, but most of the time I've been blessed with good leaders.
Training young officers to do a very difficult job is one of the questions I asked you a moment ago. Now let's talk about developing the high quality young officers into becoming leaders themselves. I'm sure that's gratifying. Talk a little bit about some of those experiences.
So I mentioned about being a field training officer, and that's to teach officers how to use the tools in their toolbox. And once they master that and they become solo officers, and they're on their way to working in the field by themselves, you start to see people that gravitate towards different types of police work. For example, like crime investigations at a detective level, or maybe they go into a specialty field like bomb squad or SWAT, many other skill sets that the police, because not everybody can do all of them, but each one has a calling. And you see that those people that are going to aspire to be supervisors have to have that ability to influence people in a way that they will follow you. And I think that you start to identify that in your subordinates early on, and you realize that they're following you. People will follow you if you can offer them the right kind of influence. Again, following department policy and always striving to do the right thing when no one is watching. And you start to see that officers start to surface. There's not as many. The pack gets very narrow when you get into supervision. It's like there's a lot of Indians and there's a few chiefs. And so becoming a sergeant or a supervisor or even a commander, it takes several more years because there's more to understand. You have to understand investigations and major crime investigations and whatnot. So there's always new jobs to learn. You've got to be a career learner, and training is how we do that. Ongoing training.
In an earlier episode of From the Vault Leadership Lessons You Can Bank On, we had as a guest retired Colonel Joel Hagee. He really did a great job of emphasizing leadership principles. And when I think of principles, two words come to mind immediately: always and never. Those are principles where there is no compromise. Do you have some leadership principles that you've learned as a leader of police officers that always and never would apply?
I think I've emphasized, there's officers who can be the best. They can chase after suspects. They can, drive the car the best. They could be hot on the trail of a suspect. But what really comes down to things we cannot compromise is integrity and compassion and meeting expectations. You have to be able to understand the job and then use those policies and those practices to affect the law. I mean, it's our justice system, which again gets back to our founding documents, that we have to maintain this integrity of enforcing the law, even when it's not fun.
Understood. What have I missed as you and I have explored leadership in this conversation? Is there something on your mind that I failed to ask on the topic of leadership?
I think that a person who is a good leader is someone, it doesn't need to wear the badge. I think that it's important to realize that you can be a community leader and a leader in just about everything. You're a leader in your family, you can be a leader in your church community, and you can be a leader in the general community. But there is always a need for leadership. It doesn't need to just be from, say, a law enforcement perspective. That's just my skill set that I have. But I encourage people that see this and have an inspiration to take on leadership is, do not be afraid to make mistakes, but always try to do the right thing. And I think you will always be successful.
Thank you. Very insightful. Appreciate your contribution, John. From the Vault, leadership lessons you can bank on comes to you from Vita, downtown Sandusky, where the elite meet to eat. Sponsored by Lucky Stone Uniforms, also produced by Lake Erie TV. Thank you. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode of From the Vault, leadership lessons you can bank on.
From the Vault is sponsored by Vita Coffee and Wine Bar in downtown Sandusky, where the elite meet to eat. Visit us in person or on the web at vitasandusky.com.
From the Vault is supported by Lucky Stone Uniforms. Go to luckystoneuniforms.com to supply uniforms for local law enforcement, fire service, EMS service, and medical agencies and organizations in North Central Ohio.
From the Vault is produced by Lake Erie TV. Watch us, like us, and follow us at lakeerie.tv.